Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever you're watching this. It doesn't matter if you're watching this on the East Coast, on the West Coast, any coast, if you will. Happy to be here on this Thursday. A little bit of a different show. Schedules got a little bit conflicted on our end, at least on my end, I should say. Had some birthdays and some other, you know, scheduling conflicts, if you will, yesterday, but we're back, baby. It is Rolex 24 week here as I will be at the track tomorrow, beginning our coverage of the Rolex 24 weekend. We had a great day today. Mr. Liam Herbert helping out on the site, writing up some great stuff for the site. Stay tuned. That'll all be on the website here shortly this evening as we will be covering the entirety of the weekend as it is the Once Around the Clock Classic in Daytona this Saturday and Sunday. A lot to get into tonight. A lot of news stories, a lot of recent news stories that came out today that we'll definitely dive into a little bit here on the show. And first off, Liam, how you doing, man? Good to see you. It is a busy time of year. I mean, it is. I'm even behind myself on stuff. It is going to be a lot of fun the next 3 nights. I cannot wait. Excited to be at the track tomorrow for the Michelin Pilot Challenge season opener, and also for the Mazda MX-5 Cup round number 2 of the season. And then looking forward to obviously the big one on Saturday and Sunday. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Lot of fun this weekend. So, how are you today, my good friend?
I'm doing very well. The racing season is truly now upon us. And it's crazy how we went just 2 weeks ago from being like very sad that nothing was happening. And now we're like, okay, wait, this is actually a lot and it's a lot to keep up with. But no problem there. That's what we love. That's what we live for. So
Yeah, quite a busy schedule this week, and a lot of racing over the next handful of days. Couple of series kick off their season this weekend, so definitely get into some of that here as we dive into some of the different news stories as well. But let's begin. The roar before the 24 at Daytona was this past weekend, and it saw two races being contested for the VP Racing Fuel Sports Car Challenge season opener, round one and round two, both going in a sweep, if you will, in terms of the winners of the race. Kiko Porto able to grab the win in the GSX class. Adam Adelson able to grab the win in the GTDX class, a brand new GT3 based class that is debuting in that series, and then the P3 winner is Valentino Catalano, able to get the win for Gebhardt Motorsports in their P3 efforts. They actually had a pretty solid weekend overall, really strong performance in the VP races on Saturday and Sunday. In a rainy Sunday, and BMW looks strong through practice as well in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. You could go find all of our the official results on our Instagram page and on Twitter. We have all the results posted if you want to go in depth and really see how everybody kind of stacked up over the roar. But Liam, it was a great way to kickstart the new year of racing. You know, a lot of people kind of consider the Rolex 24 kind of being the true kickstart, if you will, the big race that kind of kickstarts this flurry of action we get over the next 3 months of the season with all these series kind of opening up, at least in terms of the American stuff. Um, it was a lot of fun being at the track. One of the busiest weekends for the Roar I have been to. I've only been to the Roar a handful of times, and it felt like I was at a race weekend. It felt like I was at the Rolex 24 weekend. It was a wild scene to see the fans. A lot of credit to IMSA for making this event as big of a spectacle as it could be because of them not having any qualifying. You know, a lot of people were wondering how would this event fare in terms of bringing in the audience and bringing in the people. It was packed. It was packed, and it was a lot of fun to see the track in full swing. Obviously, the rain I think drove a lot of people away on Sunday, as you could see in some of the videos of the race where the campgrounds were pretty much empty. But all in all, great start to the IMSA season. A lot to take away, obviously, and I really enjoyed the VP races. I thought they were entertaining. I think there was a little bit of aggressive racing that we saw that I was a little frowning upon, especially some of the Turner Motorsports cars were getting a little getting a little, I don't get, I'll say this, frisky, if you will, trying to make some moves and being maybe a little over aggressive in the race. But you got a lot of younger guys in this series and guys who are trying to make their way up to Michelin Pilot Challenge or potentially even the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. But overall, I thought it was a good start to the season, and it's obviously a great segue as we head into the Rolex 24 this weekend.
Absolutely, I thought it was a great little bite-sized WeatherTech race almost because you still have that really wide field, but it's just 45 minutes and not 24 hours. So I think especially if you're someone kind of new to the endurance kind of racing, it's a good way to kind of wet your toes a little bit without having to stay up a whole day to watch a race. So
No, I actually agree with that. That's actually a great statement. I think, this is a series that people are going to find really attractive given that it is multi-class racing and it's really the first true um, good opportunity um, that we'll be getting a chance to kind of see like a prototype with GT3, GT4 cars all on the same grid. And it does provide for guys getting to learn traffic in terms of racing in IMSA, dealing with different speeds of cars with GT3s and GT4s and the P3 cars obviously being the quickest on the grid. And I think it's going to make for interesting racing throughout the year. And I think it's going to make for a really good developmental series as well for a lot of these guys who want to go up to LMP2 and prototype racing, or a lot of these guys who want to go to GT3 racing. Obviously, on the grid, 9 entries were on the official list for the GTDX class to open up the season. A handful of guys we kind of already know who they are. Given that they have raced in the GT3 level in terms of IMSA WeatherTech or in other series, such as Adam Adelson. He just his teammate secured the pole for Wright Motorsports. We'll talk a little bit about that here later on in the show. But, I think it's going to be an interesting class to keep an eye on. I'm excited to see how that GTDX class evolves. And then, you know, it's I think the series is trending in the right direction. I think it is a true developmental series now compared to something like Michelin Pilot Challenge, which is a little bit more different. It's got its own unique style a little bit, and obviously excited to see them on track tomorrow for their big 4 hour race. That's going to be a bit of a long one tomorrow. It's going to be we're going to have to Liam. We might need some help with that there tomorrow in terms of covering. I'm going to be wild tomorrow with everything going on, but it's gonna be a lot of fun, man. It was a good way to start the year, to say the least.
absolutely, I'm just glad it's going on. That's finally happening.
Yeah, it's good to see racing back again. We talked a bit about practice. Um, Overall, BMW looked strong. Porsche had a bit of a downfall over the weekend in practice. A lot of issues going for Porsche, some hybrid problems. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. A team that looked really dominant last year in IMSA and in WEC. And really, as a brand, Porsche was one of the best teams, or one of the best programs, I should say, across the board, winning in both WEC class championships. Plus, you got the GTP title. Plus, you got a Rolex 24 win out of it. GTD Pro Championship coming along with the Porsche team. It was a pretty strong year for Porsche. And to start out like this, obviously, you do get a pull out with Wright Motorsports, as we mentioned, but a little bit of a struggle for the GTP ran program by Penske.
For sure. For sure, yeah. The qualifying was pretty interesting to watch. Some people, as you said, like staying strong. I think was it. Yeah, Bloomquist. Well, Bloomquist did not get the pole today. That went to Van Thor for the GTP, but it was pretty close there. So, like, some people were maintaining what they did last year, but for the most part, well, yeah, as you said, Porsche's definitely gone down a step.
Yeah, and it's early. A lot of these teams, you just kind of never. I mean, obviously they had legitimate problems, but a lot of these teams might be hiding some things. Obviously, for qualifying, you don't expect that, but during practice, you kind of don't know what you're going to expect. And even Cadillac wasn't maybe the most strongest early on here, and I think we'll see hopefully some improvement from Cadillac. They've always been a really strong manufacturer in this race, and I think there is something to be said with the team. But I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. Again, there's only so much you could take away. And remember, the weather was a little bit different as well today from qualifying and even from Sunday's practice. Rain is really not going to be in the forecast this weekend, so I think that's also going to be kind of something where how much our team's going to be able to kind of take away from some of these rain days that are really going to be a factor come Saturday and Sunday. So I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. Well,
So
are we going to talk about the Mazda race right now? Or are we going to save that for a little later, or do you want to?
I think we'll save it for later. We'll talk about it
Okay, all
later.
right,
We'll talk about it as we go into kind of looking towards the Rolex 24. I think that's where
sure.
we'll kind of go through the Rolex here and kind of what's already happened. There's been a few things happening here already with the Rolex 24. Again, I will be at the track tomorrow officially, so I am currently at home here as I'll be traveling over in the morning, in the wee hours of the morning, to get over to the track. Really excited for that. Other news, looking back at the weekend, San Diego Supercross had their second round of the season. It was a big win for the retiring final season for this man, Eli Tomac, able to get the win for Team Yamaha, and Team KTM able to grab another win on the early part of the season in the 250 West class as Julian Bomer able to grab the win there. The Lawrence brothers able to kind of make a comeback. Actually, some interesting stuff happening today with the Lawrence brothers. Seems like there was some sort of mismanage of their earnings or something like that with their maybe their agency or something. But there was a lot of news coming out on that. Maybe we'll touch on that sometime later on the website. But nevertheless, that's what was going on in San Diego Supercross this past weekend. Again, the Roar kind of being the big highlight of the weekend, and then obviously San Diego Supercross adding a bit more of a racing flair. I'll tell you what, Liam, I was very busy with Supercross coverage as well, writing up all my stuff. So I will I have to finish up watching that and get up the recap for it. It was a quite a busy weekend to say the least of just racing coverage, if you will.
Yeah, it seemed like it. Well, you're getting warmed up now. This is going to
I'm
be the
getting
rest of our
warmed up.
year, so
Getting warmed up. That is the best way to put it, my friend. Best way to put it, to say the least. Um, it, Again, not a crazy racing weekend. Obviously, there'll be a lot more to talk about after this weekend, next week's show. I'm looking forward for that for sure. A lot of news though came out over the last week, and we'll dive right into that because there's a lot to discuss here in terms of news and stories throughout the last handful of days. Beginning with kind of one of the earlier news stories that dropped on Thursday of last week, the news came out that Martin Truex Jr. will be returning back to racing in the Cup Series, at least for the Daytona 500. He will be teaming up with Tricon Garage, which was arguably one of the worst kept secrets within NASCAR over the last handful of weeks. But nevertheless, the heavily backed Toyota brand or Toyota team will be running in their first ever Daytona 500 as a team. It's backed, obviously, ran by David Gilliland, who's had a lot of experience racing in the Daytona 500 with multiple different teams. And it will be Truex return back to NASCAR, really, after announcing he was going to retire from full-time racing last year. He did kind of keep the door open that he was going to run maybe a race or two once in a blue moon, but Martin Truex Jr. running in the Daytona 500. Liam, what are your thoughts on MTJ getting a ride with a kind of an interesting team, to say the least, a truck team that's making a pretty hefty jump up to the Cup Series?
I'm not too surprised. And I was there at his last kind of big moment at Martinsville when he got the pole, which was really cool, and everyone was happy to see him getting that kind of a send off. I definitely got the vibe, and I talked to him very briefly at that race. That he kind of had one foot out the door, but he's definitely not quite done yet. And I think we will definitely see a few more of these kind of one-off appearances for at least another couple years. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's somebody who hasn't won a Daytona 500. If everybody remembers the year that he lost to Denny Hamlin on the kind of right at the line ending, that was probably one of the more iconic Daytona 500s to date. And, I think he's somebody who, I think he's going to honor his word. Like, I do believe, like, he's not coming back full time at all. Like, he's not going to make just a random return for like a handful of races. But for a race like this where it's a 500, you're going to get people who are going to kind of come out of the shell, if you will, come out of the woodworks. And I think it's great for Tricon to get this first opportunity. Unsure whether or not they will be basically fielding the car in other potential ways at all during the rest of the season, and having other drivers maybe jump aboard. But if this is a one-off appearance, a one-time start, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, MTJ is a guy who just came out of the series last year, just literally freshly retired. He's still obviously pretty fresh in racing. This is as best time you could run the Daytona 500, just coming out of racing, just basically coming out of being retired. Um, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know what type of speed this car is going to have, but I definitely think that they could be a strong contender. I think there's going to be a lot of support with this team, given that Toyota doesn't have a lot of support in terms of the amount of drivers and teams that are involved in the series. That will help out, I think, with Tricon in terms of getting more support from the brand. So looking forward to seeing how this is going to turn out. And I mean, anytime you get MTJ, a big name like this in the series, it's in a race like this for the 500, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he will fare with this entry.
Do you think it almost helps a driver going into a race like that, where you know you don't have to worry about the rest of the season or maintaining any of that kind of like? Do you think for him now it's just like, oh, I get to just do this one race, put my complete all into this, and do you think that kind of helps his chances in some way?
I think so. I think at least qualifying it definitely helps. Obviously the race is such a crapshoot. Anybody knows that. Whenever you watch Daytona, it's just kind of a legitimate. Just I have no idea what's going to happen with this. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a big benefit. I mean, he's going to be able to focus. It's like anybody who runs the Indy 500, and that's the only race they run. Like Ryan Hunter-Ray, for example. That's literally the only race he runs. He's going to focus on that and trying to do the best. And I think that you can train a bit more and you can prep a bit more, right? You can kind of get your focus on that race rather than focusing on the rest of the season. A lot of these guys, you know, yeah, you want to win the Daytona 500. It's a big deal, but bigger picture as well is another big thing as well. Looking at the bigger picture and kind of looking ahead for the season. Sometimes guys, maybe they don't want to take that risk. I don't know. I mean, it is a Daytona 500 though, so it's a little bit different, for this race compared to other races on the schedule. But I do think that it definitely does help when you only have this race to focus on. And I will, kind of good segue is, with Jimmy Johnson, for example, who also will be running in the Daytona 500 as well with Legacy Motor Club, which not a big shock to say the least, but interestingly enough, this race and the Coke 600 will be the only two races on his schedule this year, which very interesting. Obviously, condensing his schedule a lot from last year. Only two races. I believe he had about 8 or 9 races on the schedule last year for him in terms of the season. So a lot of people, at least from what we've heard, the reason behind it is to try to have the team focus more on their full-time efforts, which makes a lot of sense. It does take away a lot of the extra crew to go have to work on an extra car, a third car, if you will. And for a team like Legacy who's trying to build something and are still kind of in a building period, if you will, rebuilding period, it does make a lot of sense that the team wants to try to put their focus within the full-time entries. But nevertheless, Jimmy Johnson will be back running the 500, also running the Coke 600. Very exciting news. Obviously, always good to have the 7-time champ in the grid and in the field for the 500. But, it does beg the question, Liam, how much longer does Jimmy Johnson have doing this? I mean, the guy has won the Daytona 500. Fortunately enough for him, he's won the 500. He's a 7-time champion. I mean, there are some milestones that are plausible for him to attain potentially if he ever does get back to his winning ways. But I mean, to be honest with you, the grid's getting better. The strength of the grid, the strength of the entries that are on, in the races are getting a lot better. It's going to be a challenge if Jimmy Johnson wins another race in NASCAR. But with these super speedway races and even a race like the Coke 600, big deal races, kind of gem races within NASCAR, it makes a lot of sense. But how much longer does Jimmy Johnson have doing this? The guy's getting older. He's not getting any younger. He had that stint in IndyCar for a bit and then went back here to NASCAR. So, I mean, what is that like outlook going forward in terms of the kind of the length or however long he's got, um, in terms of what's left in the tank for Jimmy?
Uh, Longer than Martin Truex Jr., I think. I don't know if I'm going to.
Really?
Uh, that's a hard one. I think Jimmy Johnson still has at least another couple years. I feel like Martin Truex Jr. also probably around the same amount of time, but I just have this feeling that Jimmy Johnson still has something he wants to do with all of it. Like I have a stronger feeling that his heart is in a little bit more in that way. Where Martin Truex Jr. he really is looking at the exit ramp now, right? And Jimmy Johnson maybe he's getting there, but he's still doing it, and he's not slowing down too much. So I don't know. I definitely think it'll be another couple years for both of them.
I mean, what you say a couple years? What's a ideal like kind of pinpoint? Like, is it one? I meant maybe not 1 year, but is it 2 or 3 years? Is it 4,
If
5,
he
six,
did
7?
like one or two more Daytonas or the Coke 600 next year, I would not be surprised. I'd be kind of surprised if he did that 2026, 2027, or 2028, something like that.
No, that makes sense. No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, I definitely think.
Let's ask him. Let's just call him up right now. Why not? Let's live tweet him
Hey,
to get on our
that's an
podcast.
listen. That is a option right there. We could live tweet him, and ask him uh, how many more years he got, Jimmy, and we could go with that. No, I mean I think I think Jimmy. I definitely he's a racer. I mean he obviously wants to continue doing this and stuff and try to win some of these gem races, if you will, but yeah, I just don't know. I don't know. I think kind of what you said. Maybe got a couple like maybe 2 or 3 years left in him, and then I think he'd probably be done. And if he wins a race, be awesome. I think Jimmy Johnson fans will be super excited about it. But I think for him, it's he's always going to be sellable, right? He's always going to be marketable no matter what. He's your 7-time champion. He's arguably one of the greatest NASCAR drivers in the last 25 years. And not many people really, when he was winning titles, not many people liked him. He was like Brady. People honestly did not like Jimmy Johnson very much, even though he is a nice guy from what I've heard. But again, we'll see. I mean, it's going to be, we'll see how much longer he wants to continue doing this, and I guess only time will tell. But Liam, looking at this, I mean, looking at this impressive open lineup, to say the least, it's staggering. You're going to have 8 open cars competing in this year's Daytona 500, at least in trying to qualify for the race. I guess we should go through them. And I believe, yeah, we already did go through Justin Allgaier last week. We talked a little bit about him being with Junior Motorsports. So here's your confirmed drivers. You got Allgaier with Junior Motorsports, which is going to be basically a Hendrick car, pretty much, or mostly Hendrick car. JJ Yaley with NY Racing, Martin Truex Jr. with Tricon, Anthony Alfredo behind Beer Motorsports. That's usually a pretty quick ride that usually gets run in the Daytona 500. Chandler Smith is now the new driver for the Garage 66 program. That's another kind of bit of news, is Smith now taking over that Garage 66 MBM Motorsports ride. That was the Mike Wallace ride, for anybody who's wondering, that he unfortunately lost. BJ McLeod at Live Fast. Jimmy Johnson with Legacy in the 84, and then Helio Castroneves in that Trackhouse 91. So, I mean, right now, Liam, you get 4 cars in. Obviously, Helio would be your exempted driver if he doesn't make the field. Who's your 4 to get into the Daytona 500 right now? It's quite a pretty impressive field. Who's your 4 to get in
I
right now
can't
to the
even
Daytona
begin to
500?
answer that question. That's a really tricky one. I think Helio. My prediction is Helio will make it in on merit. I would be surprised if he ends up being exempted, but it is possible. Um, I think Jimmy also has a good shot. She's done it so many times. And then pick 2 other random people from that list, and that's my list. I think.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Uh, yeah, I mean, again, it's a really complicated list, right? Because I mean, the easy ones would be Allgaier with Junior Motorsports, given their speed and the program and such. Truex, just given because it's Martin Truex Jr., Jimmy Johnson, and Helio. If you're gonna go for the big names, those are the 4 you'll take. But I'll be honest, this is kind of my pick here, and this might be controversial a little bit. This is who I got. I got Allgaier, Truex. I do believe Castroneves makes it in due to time. I actually think Trackhouse, they have so much speed behind those entries, and Chevy's usually really strong in this race. Chevy and Ford are always really strong. Not a ton of Fords within this field of open cars. The only one is at Garage 66, which will be shocking if Chandler Smith does make the field in that car. But I got Allgaier, Castroneves, Truex, and then that leaves me with a third. and I'm or with a fourth, and I'm gonna go with a bit. I'm gonna go with a bit of a surprise here. I'm gonna go with Anthony Alfredo in the Beard Motorsports car. Beard has always been a really strong team at Daytona. They've always had pace, and I just have a feeling Jimmy Johnson will not make the field this year in the Daytona 500, which would be such a shock. I mean, that would be a news story to talk about by the end of the weekend because obviously everybody would assume Jimmy would make the field or should make the field. But if that doesn't, I mean, there is a good chance, again, as we mentioned, good chance that MTJ or Jimmy Johnson could not make the field for the Daytona 500. Helio's basically locked in, so you're basically got those seven to pick from. I mean, there's a possible chance one of those guys don't make the field.
Yeah, I think so too. And well, and goes back to what we were just saying. Whoever doesn't make this field, if Martin Truex or Jimmy Johnson doesn't make it, maybe that is an indication that they really are kind of on the way out.
I think
Um,
those are two really interesting picks because, like, both Toyotas. Toyotas isn't always the most strong at Daytona. And also with Tricon, you kind of don't know what they're going to bring to the table. Like, that's such a new program. Same thing with Legacy. It's like they're not the most strongest team on the grid, but it is going to be interesting.
Absolutely. Um, well, and actually, to really answer your question from before too, I think it's whoever the sponsors want to pay to keep having to be there, and I feel like at the moment that is definitely Jimmy Johnson, has the long-term marketability, maybe that Martin does not have in the short term, but who's to say? Who's to say?
It's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be very interesting to keep an eye on. Again, like it is one of the most complex open fields that we've had in quite some time. I mean, it is quite a field to say the least. Um, in terms of the open, I mean, it's hard to imagine three drivers on that list are arguably some of the best drivers, like race car drivers in the last 25 years with MTJ, Martin Truex Jr., Jimmy Johnson, and Helio Castroneves. And I mean, Helio's basically in, but one of those two guys can make the field. Like two of the best NASCAR drivers, maybe top 50. Um, and there's a chance they may not even make the field. It's going to be quite interesting to keep an eye on that once we come to Daytona. It's hard to believe, only 1 month away, Liam, less than a month away until we're at Daytona and for the 500. It's gonna be wild. It's gonna be a wild weekend there at Daytona. It's gonna be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Can't wait for that. It's gonna be really exciting to see. Other news that came out on Thursday, this was kind of a notable piece of news. Alex Lynn, one of the Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac drivers, will be off the entry list in the number 40 entry, which means that entry will subside to 3. The team decided not to add in another driver for that entry, which is not something uncommon. That actually is something that actually is happening with the Porsche Penske guys. So Wayne Taylor will be the other team to run 3 drivers in the race. The reason is due to him having a virus. No more was reported on that. The team basically put out a press release stating the what was happening with Alex, and basically that was the report was that it was a virus. Unfortunately, unfortunate for him. Obviously, definitely would have loved to see an Alex Lynn race in this race. He's a longtime Cadillac driver, has had a lot of success with the brand and the program, and I think would have been a great addition to that team in terms of the team's first race um, under the Cadillac badge, at least for Wayne Taylor Racing. That would have been a good person to have for that opening race. So unfortunate that he won't be able to compete in it this year, but hopefully he'll be feeling better enough to get back going again for the World Endurance Championship season opener here at Qatar in a couple of weeks. So hopefully we'll be seeing him coming up here shortly there. Some other news came out. William, this is right up your ballpark. Obviously, being our IndyCar writer, is the press, some press, we didn't get it as lucky,
Not
unfortunately.
us, we should say.
We apparently didn't get as lucky, but nevertheless, the press, a handful of press and media were able to see the early renderings of the new IndyCar that will be coming out. I believe it's in 2027 here, coming up here soon. So, Liam, you could probably take a bit more on this here. Talk a little bit about maybe just some of the reception you might have heard from some of the people within the media on what the new IndyCar may look like, or at least what the overall just kind of thoughts were. And what are your thoughts about, again, what the series is doing? We've talked a lot about this over the last handful of months about, the series and the direction that they're going into, the marketing that they're doing. Just talk a little bit about how important this car is in terms of that future kind of trend for this series on as they're trying to go on the up and up, if you will, here in the US.
Absolutely. Well, I think at the moment it's almost a blessing in disguise where it's kind of insane that it's been so long since we've gotten a new car, but if there was ever a time to leave some really juicy breadcrumbs that one is coming, now is actually kind of the best moment it could possibly be, where we have all this hype for the Fox deal and all of the money and the publicity that is now being put in that. So pretty much now is the perfect moment to start kind of titillating us all with these things. So last week was the content day at Indianapolis, where they had all of the big interviews and stuff, like the preseason previews, if you will. And it is now pretty much an open secret that Penske is working on a new car and has been sharing ideas with it with team owners, and also now I think pretty much all the big journalists have seen it, but just the public has not, and certainly we have not. But during the interview, a lot of the interviews, people were just asking about it and talking about details, and some drivers had things to say, and Roger Penske even had stuff to say. So it's definitely very much out there now. From what we understand, David Land, who's a big IndyCar YouTuber, he talked about it. He's seen it. He describes it as more evolution than revolution. So there's still a lot of the Dallara DW12, the current chassis DNA in it. I know that it apparently has an F2 style wing. So if you've seen like the big sweeping kind of back wings, it has that. Now that keep in mind, none of this is completely final, but it does seem to be like a really cool looking version of the cars they have now, and with the aero screen obviously a bit more kind of a part of it, because as it stands, that chassis was not designed to have an aero screen. They put it on a few years ago. Now it's all being built around that and all that. So hopefully we're only maybe a couple months away from getting to see it ourselves or hearing when a final version might be agreed on. But at the moment, it's all speculation. But I think that's a good thing, because I already feel like this is kind of the best spot IndyCar has been in for a really long time. And this is just a cherry on top that you can get those fans the ones who have been keeping waiting, but also the new ones to be like, oh, just wait, you think it's good now. There's even more stuff coming around the corner.
Yeah, and again, like IndyCar has gone through a lot of different iterations, right? Remember when they became kind of they jointed together with Champ Car, and that became kind of like one thing and one entity. Like IndyCar's gone through a lot of change over the years, like especially since like the early 2000s. You go into kind of the 2010s, you going through like kind of the ESPN ABC deal, then you go into NBC, and they've gone through a lot of differences, and then the Aero Screen edition, like this has been a series that has been through a lot of change and difference over the last several years. You know, how important is this chassis again going to be in terms of drawing interest for fans, and also for not only for that, you know, being able to kind of sustain something within IndyCar, right? Because again, this series has seen a lot of change, and I think that's one thing that IndyCar fans want. I think is some consistency, if you will. They want to be able to like grasp onto something, grasp onto like a certain car, grasp on, they want to be able to grasp on that product a little bit. So can you kind of tell me how important this brand new Indy car is going to be when it debuts in 2027 in terms of just being able to kind of, um, bring some consistency within to the IndyCar paddock?
I think more than anything, it shows the IndyCar is still competitive with other series, but I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
put too much of an emphasis on that. I think it's just more that IndyCar is a modern series and they are the pinnacle of this kind of racing, and people should be interested in it because of that. Is a big part of it. I think, look, Formula E has gone through literally, I think, every generation of their cars. Yeah, Formula E has gone through every generation of their cars in the time that Indy cars just had one. I think Formula One has been through at least three or four generations of cars. So motorsport has changed a lot since 2012 when the current chassis got introduced. So I think it is important symbolically for IndyCar to show that they are keeping up with the times on one hand, but also that they have some new things to provide to the fans. Because here's the thing: IndyCar for the last 10 years has absolutely been more about keeping the teams happy than it has been about being on the cutting edge, making the fans interested, because it has to be. It costs a lot of money to stay in the sport. It costs a lot of money to make these cars. So obviously, team owners, they don't need the fanciest bells and whistles because that's another $100,000 $200,000 that they have to worry about every time that someone crashes a car. So that has been the really careful balance that Roger Penske and that entire, the corporate side of things has been trying to balance, and they've done a very good job of it. IndyCar still exists. That is actually kind of a miracle, and we should all be really happy with it. So the fact that we are now at this point where the time for growth, there's this feeling that it is now upon us, and clearly everyone's putting that effort in. All the drivers, all the teams, all the people behind it, they're like, yes, we can finally make that push again, and I think that's what has everyone very excited.
Yeah, do you think there was a time, like, would you say there was kind of like a time frame or maybe even a time stamp, if you will, in terms of IndyCar's history that you would say was kind of maybe when fans started, I don't want to say dwindling out, but maybe disconnected from the product?
Well, obviously the split in the '90s almost killed everything. Almost killed all of IndyCar. It almost killed even the Indy 500. So that was a big part. And then NASCAR rising in the ashes and becoming the biggest thing ever. I'll say since it reunified, there was kind of a moment there, like 2010, like you said, the ESPN, ABC kind of deal days, that it seemed like it was kind of coming back, but the Dan Weldon crash, like there were things even in that era that kind of put a damper on things, and
I
I
also
think
think
it's
the loss of Danica Patrick too going to NASCAR didn't help either. Having the only
absolutely.
female in the series was a big key as well.
I think that's actually a really great, if you want to put a stamp on it. Jeff Gordon going to NASCAR was kind of the beginning of the end for IndyCar in the '90s. I would
Hmm.
say Danica going to NASCAR in the 2010s is a very similar kind of thing, where it's just showing where the cultural emphasis really is. And it's been a niche sport. IndyCar has had to kind of just be satisfied with being kind of a niche, having a steady fan base, having the Indy 500, but not really being able to kind of grow beyond that. And just I think the biggest thing is Americans are interested in racing again, right? That's the big takeaway about all of this. And it's helping IMSA, it's helping IndyCar, it's helping NASCAR even kind of rejuvenate itself a little bit. So I think now that there actually is a base that they can cater to, that they can market to, Americans who actually know what racing is and have a kind of positive connotation of it. The other thing I will say about that is safety. The fact that we are now 12 years removed from Dan Weldon, unfortunately, Justin Wilson, Robert Wickens' bad crash, even though thankfully he's still with us, obviously. Those were still pretty big blemishes on the sport. IndyCar was definitely the last really dangerous motorsport within the last 10 years. And the fact that we are now have more time removed, I think that helps a lot too. I don't think America, especially 10 years ago, no one wanted to watch something where there really was a risk of people getting very badly injured every race. So it's a lot of factors all coming together, and the time is now very ripe for them.
Yeah, remember, I mean, IndyCar just recently added those windscreens. They were added in like 2020. That was like the first year they added those in. So, IndyCar is just most recently has been, kind of trying to add more emphasis to their safety and trying to heighten that up. And I think they've done a very good job. I mean, you look at there have been some pretty bad crashes that's happened in IndyCar even over the last several years of the windscreen era. And fortunately enough, nothing major has happened, which has been a good thing. The Graham Rahal crash might have been the biggest one. I think was it? No, who was it last year? It was Stefan. Was it Wilson last year? Who was the one that got hurt in 23? Who got hurt in 2023?
Uh,
You know who I'm talking about.
yes, I do. I think it was.
I
I
think
don't know if it was real.
it wasn't. No, who was it? I can't remember. Anyways, there was a big incident that happened in 2023 where one of the drivers did get hurt and unfortunately couldn't race in the Indy 500. Nevertheless, um, I do think that IndyCar again is trending in the right direction. And as you mentioned, I think racing like is at an all time high in terms of popularity in America. I mean, it's kind of regrowing, resurging, if you will. I mean, it shows through IndyCar, right? When you have every single race on your IndyCar calendar that's going to be broadcasted on Fox Television, you don't see that in anymore in racing. I mean, even in NASCAR, in the final handful of years when you're racing every single week, NASCAR wasn't on Fox Television every week. They're not getting the prime time spot. IndyCar is getting a prime time spot, and I think with their scheduling format, with them not having to race every single week, they race about every month. It definitely helps in terms of yeah, okay, they may not be drawing, they may not be having a race every single week like NASCAR does, but it also then makes people more excited. Like, oh, I can't wait for that next race. It's a month from now. I'll be back to watch for that race. It's like for NASCAR, it's like there's every single week. So people just kind of forget there's a NASCAR race. When you
Right.
have a month to promote the IndyCar race that's coming up, like going from St. Pete, oh, we're gonna be at Thermal here coming up in a few weeks. Come check us out at Thermal. Like, I think there's more to work with when you're spreading out your schedule and people can, kind of plan things out, if you will, rather than NASCAR being every Sunday or every Saturday night, and it's just consistently having to watch a race every weekend.
I think that's a great point, Dylan. And it's kind of like baseball versus football, right? And why football has kind of taken over a lot of has become like the biggest sport in America
Yep,
is the idea that you don't have to watch literally 100 games or whatever a year just to kind of keep up on it. So yeah, that's a great point. That it has that room to kind of breathe and promote itself and all of that stuff. 100%.
absolutely, absolutely. So other news coming out this week is Lewis Hamilton making his debut in Ferrari, and he actually got to do some test laps here with the Ferrari team. Got to get into the car, get some test runs, if you will. And Lewis Hamilton is a full fledged Ferrari man, if you will. He's going to be riding his red Ferrari around town now, but exciting to see. I think that while I don't know if he will be a championship contender, I do think that this is going to be a good year for Lewis Hamilton, maybe a rebound year, if you will. I don't know if he's got another championship in him, but I do think he's got better seasons ahead with Ferrari. I do think that there is something there. Again, Mercedes saw a lot of strength last year. I mean, it was a solid season for Mercedes as a whole, actually. It was kind of a resurgence year for them. They bring in Kimi Antonelli. Now they got a really young nucleus. They kind of almost look like a McLaren esque, if you will, with some of their young stars, with George Russell, who's a young stud, and Kimi Antonelli's going to be. He's one of the most hyped F1 prospects in years. Kid's only 19 years old. It is going to be exciting to see how Lewis fares at Ferrari. This is really going to, it's shaping up to be a very exciting F1 season with a lot of these moves. 5 rookies on the field, 6 if you include Liam Lawson, who will get a full season under his belt with Red Bull. I mean, some strong rookie entries in terms of their combos with their team. So, but overall, it's going to be an exciting year for 2025 for F1, but it's going to be awesome. It's going to be very weird to see Lewis Hamilton, but also awesome to see him in the Ferrari colors. They're going to have to take some time to get used to seeing that.
Absolutely. Well, hey, red looks great on him, and the yellow too. The yellow helmet looks really good
Ooh,
on him.
yeah, the yellow.
It was cool. So, yeah, so he had his first week at Maranello this week, or just a couple of days, and it was kind of just for the pictures, but they were some nice pictures, even if it was kind of for show. Just to finally see, this moment that we've been talking about for months now. It is really cool to see, and I think it's going to bring. I mean, his first picture that he posted is already now the most liked F1 Instagram picture of all time, of anything. It had over 5 million likes. So that tells you all you need to know. It's getting so many eyes on the series that it's not even funny. And look, I don't expect him to win a championship. If he does, they'll make a movie about it one day, I'm sure. But even if he gets just a few more wins at his time in Ferrari, I think everyone will consider it a very successful, very cool thing to have happened in the history of racing. And another thing you pointed out, the amount of rookies, we got 4 or 5 rookies now. That's a really beautiful thing to see because for a while there, I think there was a feeling that F1 was kind of hanging on to a few people, that there maybe needed to be a little more new blood. Uh, which, look, it was cool that anyone who watched only the first two seasons of Drive to Survive could still know most of the drivers for like 4 or 5 years there, but probably for the best that we have some younger people now moving in as well. As much as I do love Valtteri Bottas, and I will miss him and his beautiful finish, everything,
His beautiful mullet,
his beautiful mullet, his mustache,
his
and
Tiger King mullet that he rocks. Apparently,
he's an honorary Australian.
he is.
They'll give him
Yeah.
citizenship or something. I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, F1 is also having a great moment. Look, I don't know who's having a bad moment in racing right now. Maybe NASCAR. I don't even want to say that because NASCAR's still doing okay. But
And they still got a lot of young guys.
and they got a lot of young guys. A rising tide lifts all ships, and I feel like everyone feels pretty up there right
Yeah,
now.
you speak of a rising tide. Liam, you're setting this up perfectly tonight. You speak of a rising tide. How about Connor Zilic? How about this stunning news coming out today? First off, this was filmed at New Smyrna Speedway. I don't know if a cup car has ever ran at that track before. Nevertheless, New Smyrna, the local track in Daytona, obviously SVG and Connor Zilic, both running the Rolex 24 this weekend. Well, some news came out today, and this was exciting news, very exciting news. We'll kind of go from like the smaller bit of news to maybe the bigger bit of news. Um, Smaller bit of news is Red Bull's back as a primary sponsor. They will be sponsoring SVG for 5 races. Get that, 5 races this season. Obviously, SVG, a Red Bull driver under their umbrella. So he'll be running the number 88 Red Bull car in the series. I'll have to admit, the livery looks sharp. It looks very nice. I'm also very excited to see Red Bull back. Liam, I don't know if you remember the old Red Bull team that used to race in NASCAR with Brian Vickers and Scott Speed. That was
Yeah.
always kind of a classic. AJ Allmendinger, I think, was with that program for a little bit as well. So always kind of a fun vintage throwback to me whenever I get to see those cars because I always love those paint schemes with the silver. They looked like the cans, which I thought was amazing. Like it was so great. Um, but obviously that was just part of the news that came out today because his best friend, if you will, Mr. Connor Zilic, will make his Cup Series debut under the Red Bull banner with the program, the Red Bull branding, if you will, running the number 87 for Trackhouse come at Coda. Uh, Wild news coming out today. There was a lot of rumors that Connor Zilic will be potentially getting a cup ride here. Um, it was a lot of talk. Maybe it would be the 500. Kind of makes sense it isn't the 500, given that would be 5 cars getting fielded by one team, which would be wild to me. But Connor Zilic will be making his Cup debut at the age of 18. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's one of the youngest guys to make his Cup Series debut. 18 years old, and Connor Zilic is getting a shot in the Cup Series. Never thought I would be seeing that right now, but it just tells you the type of talent he is, first off, and the amount of just the meteoric rise that he has been on these last year and a half. I mean, going into the Rolex last year, and I interviewed Connor last year, Liam. He just had signed that Trackhouse deal. He was kind of getting hot at that time, just kind of starting to get his name out there. And then within a year, the guy's one of the most popular youngest drivers within the series. It's hard to believe that is where from then to now, if you will. It's been wild.
It gets me so excited, and it was crazy. I was watching the Mazda race earlier, and all I was thinking the whole time is, "Oh man!" Like a year ago, I remember watching this and being like, "Man, this Connor Zilic kid, this is amazing." The fact that that was only a year or two ago, and it's already gone this quickly, and also just the joy of you and I personally getting to kind of check in on it. You saw him at Daytona, I met him at Martinsville. Just kind of having those kind of check-ins, seeing that rise happen has been unbelievable. This is definitely one of the it's more than meteoric. I mean, this is since I've followed racing, this is absolutely the most remarkable rise of any driver I've ever seen. So
Not even is it just the way he's done it in terms of winning races. I mean, in terms of being competitive in almost every race that he's been in, but also too just the personality he is, the branding that he brings. I mean, he is fully embraced himself as well through all this. It's just so impressive to see the type of driver he is becoming, not only on the track, but off the track as well, in terms of the way he's marketed himself. It has been incredible to see the growth that this kid has had. And to get a Cup Series right at 18, I mean, first off, it is a road course race, but imagine the amount of media drama that will be created if he wins that race. Like he actually might have a shot of winning that race because he is so good at road courses. He is a road course specialist, technically. There is a good shot he wins that race. There is a good shot he wins that race, and I wouldn't count him out. It would be wild. He would be the youngest driver to ever win a NASCAR race, I believe, or the youngest driver to at least win a Cup Series race.
I mean, look, even if he doesn't win that one, I think he still has a great shot at that. I mean, it's going to happen eventually, right? Barring some, something crazy. I mean, I'll say this: I'm not surprised about any of this. I should say him getting
No,
this Cup
no.
Series young. I'm not surprised at all. If you told me he was going to run the Daytona next month, I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm just like so excited to see what happens next for him. And he does. You said the personality. He is so confident, but not like full. He's not arrogant about it. He come like
No,
when I
no.
saw him get out of the truck at Martinsville, and he had a bad race too. He comes like, well, I don't know who wants to talk to me, but they want to talk to me, fine. But like he's just. You could fool me like that he's a 17-year-old kid because he does not seem like you're talking to one when you talk
He's
to
like a
him.
25-year-old. He's like been. It feels like he's been racing for like the series for like 10 years. Like he has that moxie to him. He's got something about him that he's very mature about the way he handles himself. And for an 18-year-old, for a 17, 18-year-old, the kid's been rising easily. It's been amazing. It's been one of the best things I've ever seen. And super excited to see him. This is going to be so much fun to keep an eye on once he gets to Coda. We'll see if he will get other races under his belt. A little surprising he is running the 87 car, given that the Project 91 car is kind of a thing. Although, they kind of reserved the Project 91 car for like a lot of drivers from other disciplines, but it's also like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess you would think you would keep that Project 91 going unless they have plans maybe to run that in that race, which would be wild to run 5 cars. But just kind of a quick question, Liam, on this. Again, 18 years old the kid is, getting his first Cup star. A lot of people would say, 18 is very young for a kid, to get a Cup Series start. And, I mean, he's going to be taking on a really big role this year and being a full-time driver for Junior Motorsports. That's a huge opportunity for him. I mean, do you think he's ready? I mean, that's the question. Do you think he's ready? I mean, I do think he's ready, but I think only time will tell to see how he adapts to a Cup car. It is a completely different car than anything he has really driven in his career. Maybe he could compare it to what he's doing this weekend in the GT race with the Corvette, so maybe that might help a little bit. But I mean, it is going to be interesting to see how he fares in this race. I mean, he is 18. I imagine the butterflies, the nerves are probably going to be with him during that first weekend at Coda. But I mean, you know, do we start looking at like 16-year-olds getting Cup rides? Like, I mean, where's that line, if you will, in terms of the Cup Series and getting drivers in? Uh oh. Well, I think we might have lost Liam. Let me see if I can refresh. Well, I think we lost Liam. Hopefully, we'll get him here in just a second. Again, just talking a bit about Connor Zilic here, and we did lose Liam, so we will hopefully get him back here in a bit. Um, Again, obviously, we'll hopefully here get him back as he returns. Let's see if we can hop him in. We always are gonna have technical difficulties. It always happens. It always happens. Wait for his return back. But yeah, Connor Zilic, I mean, big news. Awesome to see him back. Red Bull obviously returning back to NASCAR as well. Huge fan of that as well. I mean, Red Bull is such a it's been around in NASCAR for a bit, so it's always cool to see Red Bull Return. We have Liam. He's back.
I'm back. I'm here. Sorry about that. Don't know what happened there.
I don't know if you got a chance to hear my question. No problem. Did you? I don't know if
Yes, on Connor Zilic, and you said, "Are we going to see 16-year-olds in the Cup Series?" And
yeah,
I
I'm just
said,
saying, like, where do you think that cutoff is in terms of kind of the age?
"I don't know. Are they good?" Because I think that's clearly the bar that we're setting here.
Like, there's a
Connor,
15-year-old apparently running an ARCA this year, so
there was a 15-year-old in the Mazda race today too, so it happens. It's crazy. Believe me, it's crazy to me. I don't know if I would trust my teenager in a car like that, but hey, but Zilich, I think he's completely ready. And the reason why is, yeah, maybe the Cup Series car is kind of new or whatever, but he went from a Mazda to a Corvette in less than a year. And he's raced in like two or three other things
and
besides
he went
that.
to an
So,
LMP2 last year, by the way.
right, last year. So look, if he can do that jump in that short of a time, I truly think you could put him in anything. And I think you could start him in F1 race and he would probably not come in last. Like
I would die to see that. Connor Zilic needs to be in F1. Maybe F2. We'll start him in F2 and work his way up at least. So
maybe that Red
that would,
Bull partnership goes somewhere one day. I don't know. We'll see.
Formula E, you never know. That's an option too. Man, that would be huge if they get him in Formula E. Talk about bringing in some fan base there. That would be pretty massive. Other news coming out again. A lot of news this week. A lot of news. This was kind of a shock today. A bit of a shock. E1 series, which is owned by the same people that own Formula E and Extreme H as well. Alejandro Agag series. Uh, Big news came out today. We have a new owner in E1.
LeBron James.
LeBron James is an owner in E1. And now this is a series for people who don't know. It's a boat racing series. It's all electric. They start their season tomorrow, actually, at Jeddah. Really excited to watch that race. It's actually on CBS Sports. I downloaded the app to be able to watch it. Although
Yeah.
I don't know what time the race is compared to us here. I don't know what the Saudi Arabia time change is to the East Coast. But nevertheless, big news. LeBron James is now a team owner in the E1 series. And Liam, talk about who would have ever thought in a million years, get this, that we would be having like racing with Tom Brady against LeBron James. How about that? Who would have
Against
ever
Will
thought?
Smith too.
And Will Smith and Steve Aoki and who else is in it? Rafael Nadal's race has a
Yep.
team in it. I think Charles Leclerc's got a team in it, actually, if I'm not mistaken. It's Mark Anthony has a team in
Yep.
the series. It's the full fledged of celebrities racing in this. It is wild to see LeBron owning E1 series team. That was kind of big news that came out today.
Absolutely. Well, I think the crazier thing is that this race series exists, that all these people are involved in, and pretty much no one knows that it happens
Yeah, I
other
know.
than us. So, yeah, no, it's really exciting. I don't know how Alejandro got the phone contact list that he does, but oh my God, if you ever really needed to talk to someone, you should take his phone because he clearly knows everyone on Earth. So, and he's convincing. When he calls somebody up, I guess he really means it. He gets people
How
to listen.
just how wild is that though? Like we're gonna have there's a chance for the championship this year. Remember, Tom Brady's team won season one, so we're entering season two. How crazy is it that there's a chance we're gonna see LeBron James's team versus Tom Brady's team for the championship later in the year? LeBron, I mean, Tom's running out of fingers for his rings, but I mean, LeBron's at the same level as well. But it is so cool to see commitment from these star athletes are getting into racing as well. It's a different form of racing. It's not your atypical form of racing that you see with cars, but it is still racing, let alone. So it is a big deal to have people like this support a series like this.
Absolutely, 100%. I actually just watched my first E1 race this week for the first time. I didn't follow it too much last year, but yeah, it's such a cool looking thing. I mean, I need to like have like a doggy bag watching it though because when they show the inside of the cockpit and just how much they're bumping sometimes, That I can't even imagine that. It's like crazy, but
It is scary.
it's a cool thing, and I like that it's the for everyone who doesn't know, so Formula E and E1 and Electric H are now part of this Electric 360 umbrella. So they're all owned by the same thing now, and I love all of what they're doing and pushing all that cutting edge stuff. It's I mean, what a cooler. There's no cooler way to push that technology than putting people in interesting little vehicles and making them go 100 miles an hour. Like that's a great way to get people excited about it.
Well, I mean, I think Extreme H is going to be one that's going to be super big to keep an eye on with the hydrogen component and kind of being the first series to introduce hydrogen. That's a big deal, really big deal. And I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on is how is hydrogen going to play a factor in a racing series like that. So I'm excited to see how that's going to play out. Again, Alejandro is one of the most smartest men. I'm never going to ever downgrade Alejandro, and to bring in the amount of people that he's had. I mean, even Legacy Motor Club has a team in the Extreme H. Like, it's pretty wild. Like, that's, Richard Petty has a team in the Extreme H. Who would have ever thought that would have even been said either? So
Yeah.
props to Alejandro, man. Good work on you. Good to see LeBron. And actually, the livery looks strong. I don't know if you got a chance to see the livery, Liam, for the boat. That it's kind of cool, actually. I gotta admit, it's a nice looking livery for LeBron. It's got like some like a leopard jaguar print on it. It looks cool, actually. I kind of like it.
Ooh, yeah, I like it. Team Alula, very
I
cool.
don't know what that means, to be honest with you, but it's championed by LeBron James. Hey, maybe I would like to see LeBron and Tom Brady in a boat battle, like driving these boats. Imagine how much
So
market.
that I was about to say the same thing. I'm like, if they really want to impress us, you got to get them all to do it together. Look, they don't even have to do a full race. Just do like a
Or
drag
at least
race or
just sit in the
something.
cockpit and like be the
Yeah.
navigator. Like how in Rallycross they have the little guy, the navigator, next to you, reading in his little book. At least do that. That's not that hard. Or I shouldn't say it's not that hard to anybody who is in Rallycross. I shouldn't downgrade you, but nevertheless, it's something more obtainable to do rather than being the guy who actually steers a boat. So I don't know. I'm excited. It's gonna be cool to see LeBron's team racing in it. This is something that literally came out today, which is kind of shocking. It got announced today. I don't know if this is I believe he's gonna be racing this entire season. It's gonna be happening. Uh, the team's joining for this year, so really exciting news. Awesome to see them on the grid. The final bit of news we'll get into before we kind of go into talking a bit about this weekend's race is the official announced, and I mean they kind of announced it for FIA, kind of announced it earlier on, but the announce of Pit Boost and kind of more details behind it. Obviously, Pit Boost will only be used for one race during the weekend of a doubleheader. First debuting at Saudi Arabia here at Jeddah. So another Jeddah weekend for Formula. They're going to be busy over in Jeddah here these next few months with Formula E and Extreme E or E1 series. Excuse me, E1 series this weekend. But there was a bit of just kind of talk about the just kind of the background of the actual Pit Boost and what it will bring. It says it's an innovative mid race feature that provides a 10% energy increase, 3.85 kilowatts to the car through a 30-second 600 kilowatt rapid recharge in the pit lane. This mandatory sporting feature deploying significantly more power than current consumer superchargers adds another strategic element during selected races with the potential to dramatically alter race outcomes and tactics. So, again, Pit Boost coming to Formula E here in a couple of weeks. Liam, we talked a bit about this here a couple of weeks ago on the show, just kind of about the importance of adding this Pit Boost and what it brings to the table. It is going to be exciting to see how this is implemented, how teams strategize this. It is going to add another layer on top of things for Formula E and to add that with attack mode as well. It is going to be very exciting to see this play out. Obviously, they mentioned it's only going to be used for one race, but it'll be interesting to see if this is going to be something where they use it for both races during a weekend or even use it as a implemented thing for the entirety of the season.
Totally. I'm definitely still a little confused on why that is for the time being. I'm not sure if it's just a logistics thing that's just kind of hard to roll out at this point. I assume the reason that they're doing it just once per double header is maybe to break up the races a little bit. I do think maybe they're a little concerned that, when you have a double header, that the races are kind of similar to each other that way. So maybe it's kind of break up the strategy when you're doing these back to back races. I don't know. I'm definitely interested to see where they go with that. I'll also say this: it's almost a weird time for it to finally happen, in the sense that it was so hyped up for so long that I feel almost that the excitement, I don't want to say that it's past. Like, everyone's definitely excited to see it, but like, if it had arrived a season ago or 2 seasons ago when it was supposed to show up, I think it would have gotten more attention. Like, by this point we're like, oh, okay, cool, you finally got that to work out, I guess. That's nice. But also the fact that they just changed the attack charge in the new car, like, it's almost being overshadowed kind of by those things. But I'm still really excited to see it, and not just excited to see it. I'm very interested to know how this will go and how this will really affect the races.
Yeah, and there's more news. Formula E Notebook, they do a really good job on kind of covering the series and kind of giving you more information. So this is kind of more behind the pit boost. It's one booster per team. Now I don't know if that is the entire team or if it's just that car. That is an interesting
It
thing.
the way it's worded, that sounds like the whole team.
That
They
is
would just say per
interesting.
car, right? I don't
No
know.
double stacking, apparently, according to Formula E Notebook. Again, take this with a grain of salt. I'm just going, but they're usually pretty reliable in terms of news, in terms of Formula E. 30-second boost. We kind of talked about that. Tire stops are allowed only after changing, which is interesting. That might be an interesting thing. We talked a bit about that, Liam. I did mention tire changes could become a thing. Maybe I'm onto something here. Jeff Dodds might have been listening to our show. He might have saw you and been listening. So, um, three personnel for stops, and then two spare emergency chargers at the end of pit lane in case of a failure. So again, I'm just interested to see how that plays out, right? I think we're going to learn a lot once it actually gets into use, once they actually, implement it into this race. I don't know what race again. Like, do we know what race this is? Like, is it the first race? Is it the second race? Like, I'm intrigued to see like how it's all going to be implemented. I think we'll learn a lot after Jeddah, and we'll kind of get an idea of how this is going to play out, how effective it is. I mean, we finally got attack mode to be effective. How effective is this going to be? How much is this really going to even change to be another factor? Because it's like, even when you see teams where you see drivers who are very low on energy, they got like zero point 0.5 left. They're like, even like Oliver Rowland had like zero point 0.3 left in the energy tank. He still ended up winning the race. So it's like, how effective is this going to be? Is this really going to be a factor? I don't really know. I don't know how this is all going to play out.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, it does almost worry you, where like it took a while for them to work out attack charge, and it would kind of be unfortunate if this is a similar thing where it doesn't fit so well and they have to kind of tweak it over time to get it just right. So we'll see. I'm most interested to see if it will affect the length of the races. You bring up a good point. The reason that the races are 45 minutes is because that's what the batteries can do, and it's making the drivers safe so they can make it. So I guess we'll see more pushing, perhaps. We'll see people less likely to kind of hold back over a race. They'll feel like they can maybe kind of give it their all the most time. But we'll see if maybe they end up making the races longer at some point, too.
No, absolutely. It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to be implemented. And I'm actually going to be talking to Robin Frines tomorrow. So maybe we'll get some input on his thoughts of the new pit boost and how that's going to be a factor in races. I think it's going to be an exciting interview tomorrow. A lot to unpack. Stay tuned.
I think he's gonna say, "Don't talk to me about Formula E right now." He's gonna be like, "I'm on vacation, man. Like, this
Listen,
is
I'm gonna mention it. I have to. He's a Formula E driver. I'm gonna mention him briefly. I'll at least mention the pit boost because I think that is gonna be something that's gonna be worth noting. And I think it's gonna be adding some more. Again, it's gonna add more strategy for sure. It's no question about
absolutely, man.
it.
No, get
It's
ahead
gonna
of
be,
that story. That's what you
no,
gotta do."
absolutely. I have 4 Formula E drivers to my disposal. I might as well use it while I can. So again, I've only been able to get. This is the only Formula E driver I'm going to get. But hey, I'll take it. I'll take any I can. So, anyways, let's talk a bit about the weekend. Again, it is a busy weekend, actually. Excuse me. A lot of racing to be had. Saturday, Anaheim 2 is going to be on the docket, as The Supercross Monster Energy Supercross Series returns to Anaheim for their third round of the season, their second race at Anaheim, and they'll be back next week in Glendale. We'll take a look more in that next week. We'll see if the Lawrence brothers can finally find a way to get a victory here in the 450 class. Jet Lawrence has not been able to grab a victory here early on in the season, so kind of shocking. And I think it's going to be kind of the story of the year in terms of it might be the year of kind of some other riders, if you will, here in terms of maybe the 450 class. So interested to see if Jet Lawrence can find a way to get the job done, or we're going to see another different winner, if you will, outside of Jet here in race number 3. So there's a little bit of kind of something to look forward to there for Supercross. How about this, Liam? NASCAR's back in a sense this weekend. Not a very big entry list for the opener for the ARCA Menards West Series at Kevin Harvick's Kern Raceway in Bakersfield, California. 12-car entry list at the moment. The big name, though, is Daniel Hemrick will be getting a ride to run in the race. So big name there. Maybe one of the odds-on favorite, but you have him in the race. Tanner Reif also joining in. Cody Dennison as well. So some notable ARCA names will be competing this weekend for the ARCA Menards Series West opener. I imagine there are a lot of drivers off the list, so as teams are preparing for Daytona, and you'll probably be seeing a lot of teams from all of ARCA's series coming into play and trying to compete in that race. We actually just heard news that City Garage Motorsports is partnering up with an ARCA team to actually give them a better shot of getting into the race. They will be now badged as a number 86 with Club Motorsports they're going to be partnered with. The car will be operated by City Garage Motorsports, but will actually be running as the 86 instead of the 85, which means the team will have a better shot of getting into the Daytona 200. And sometimes you got to do that, Liam, to get into this race. It's a tough race to get into. And when you have 32 spots on time, 8 due to ownership points, gives yourself a better shot to get into the race when you got those ownership points to fall back on. So I'll be interested to see how CGM is going to be able to fare in that race. David Ift, who was a longtime crew chief, he's been with Darrell Waltrip and some other big names, Cale Yarborough as well. He'll be on the pit box, returning back to NASCAR, doing the crew chiefing duties for Beckham Monopoly for that race. But yeah, excited to see NASCAR back. It's going to be a lot of fun. Always good to see the ARCA Menards Series kick off the season. ARCA is going to be in a video game. How about that, Liam? I'm so excited.
I'm really excited about that. It was really nice to see all of the ARCA people, all of the drivers, like posting about it, being like, yeah, I'm going to be in the video game. Look at that.
And iRacing's director has done a great job already. He's been posting out on Twitter saying, hey, if you want to be in the game, come find us at Daytona. Message us here on Twitter. Reach out. We'll get you in the game. I love that they are trying to make this game different than any of the other NASCAR video games. The last couple of NASCAR games, Liam, have been a bit drab, to say the least. With Heat 5 and Heat 4, I love the sign there. It's been a bit drab, to say the least, and NASCAR Ignition wasn't anything better. That was a pretty awful game, to say the least. So hopefully iRacing, and I think they will do a good job. I mean, to already have all 4 major series, including ARCA, the legit ARCA series in the game, is a pretty big deal. And I'm happy that they're going to try to make this as authentic as they possibly can be.
Absolutely, dude. We need a good next gen. We haven't had a good next gen car game yet.
No, we have not. They just added them into Forza. The next gen car is now in Forza. They did obviously have the next gen car added into Ignition. They also added them into NASCAR Heat 5. So NASCAR Heat 5 also has a next gen car as well. It was a downloadable package, but now you can't even download any of those games anymore because of how bad they were, for one. Number two is they're just so old they don't want to put any more time and effort into that. So looking forward to the new game coming out. Going to be a lot of fun. Happy to see that coming here in the near future.
IndyCar, please make a game. IndyCar, you need a game.
iRacing was supposed to be the backer for that too. So iRacing, once you're done with this NASCAR game, go out and make an IndyCar game. I will buy that in a second. The last time we've seen an IndyCar in a video game was in the Forza game Forza had them in 2020 or in 2017 when they came out with Forza Motorsport 7. They were
Yes,
you could buy the car, but it wasn't,
they were in Project Cars 2. That's
there
all
you
I had
go.
to add to that. I remember that.
Well, I know they have
Um,
IMSA cars in Forza as well, so that's always a fun thing. They have
I
the
will say,
Cadillac.
if there's not a Brayton Laster pizza car in the new NASCAR game, I'm not buying it.
If
I'm
there's
gonna
not a Brayton
boycott.
Laster car and there's not a CGM car, remember our logo has a chance of being in a video game. We talked about this yesterday. This is a legitimate shot. The ARD logo is gonna be in a video game. So if that is the case, if we get in this game, if the team gets in this game and the logo's on the car, I'm buying this game no matter what. I don't care how bad it is. I will buy this game no matter what happens. So that is going to be a definite thing. And Liam, got to close out on this, man. Got to get talking about the Rolex 24. We mentioned it briefly at the beginning of the show, which it's been a long show tonight. We went long tonight, didn't we? But hey, it's Rolex 24 weekend. We got a lot to talk to. It's a lot going in, but Liam, today was qualifying. The field is set to go, and BMW's got the pole for the GTP class. The LMP2 class is led by United. How about Ford getting the pole in GTD Pro? That's a pretty strong way to start the year. And Wright Motorsports talked to Adam Adelson and, Elliott Skier last week, and they are getting off to a hot start in their GT3 car for the GTD class as they grab pole. Last year's Chip Hart Racing team already going on pole, and I don't know which one's going to be Brad Pitt or not, but it doesn't matter in the new F1 movie. It's just exciting to see that team on pole. They are a really fun duo, and Adam Adelson had a really strong start last week, sweeping the GTDX class. Trying to maybe sweep the GT3 classes in general in terms of race wins. How about that? Wouldn't that be something? That would be a storyline.
Absolutely, yeah. And Ford with the 1-2, I think, for
Yep. What
GT
was the
Pro
1-2?
2. So
Yeah.
very, very strong start for them. Very cool to see.
You watched qualifying a little bit.
I
You
did.
mentioned that ending. That was quite an ending. The Lamborghini Acura battle there at the end as well. Both of those cars just dueling it out. I could not believe that was happening. I watched the highlight of that there, and then the Mazda MX-5 Cup race this evening as well was a lot of fun. Very rainy one. Tell us a little bit about what happened in the Mazda race. At least we kind of touched briefly in the qualifying, but talk a little bit about this Mazda race that happened tonight.
Well, there was a dice roll and it just did not play out. It was one of the maybe the saddest kind of thing I've seen in a race like this before, where the first thing was Nate Cicero came in from the lead. He was really
Yeah.
leading the race and doing pretty good. He came in. Everyone's like, "Oh, does he have a problem?" He's like, "Oh, he's changing to slicks." And for like maybe 1 minute, the commentators are like, "Wow, brilliant move! This could really pay off." But within like literally a few minutes, they're like, "Oh, this is not going to work. It's still very wet out." And then the other really sad part is then Gretchen Wagner was in the lead for a few
Yep.
laps, and as soon as he lost it, he was going to make the same gamble. Came in, I don't know why he thought it would work, but he did. He came in the second he stopped the car in the pit, it started downpouring, and he just got out of the car and just went, and that was it. Just went in the pit box. So, uh, lesson learned, it's usually not worth it. Look, with those Mazda cars, it takes a long time to switch those tires. So if you're
It was
gonna
like
do
one
that,
tire each. What was that about? I didn't even realize that.
so weird. It takes a long time to switch those. So you don't do that unless you really think it's gonna work
Really
out. Because
have to, yeah,
otherwise,
or it's gonna pay off, yeah. And with a
absolutely.
track like
Seeing
Daytona, it's such a short track compared to so many of the other road courses that you really can't buy that time. There's not as many braking zones. There's not as much, it's not a technical circuit. It's a pretty straightforward circuit. So you can get around that track relatively quick. You can zoom around it.
absolutely, absolutely. Especially when no one's expecting you to pit. Like
Yeah,
you're in the
no.
lead, great. No one. It's a spec series. No one's gonna catch. Just stay there. Like and it was just amazing seeing the commentators do the, oh well, he's got to know, right? Like you wouldn't do that unless you like really knew it. Oh wait, no, it's just not. That's just
Oh
not gonna
crap.
work. Like
Oh.
it was nice of them to give him the benefit of the doubt, though. I did too for a minute. I'm like, oh well, maybe, but no.
By the way, I love their commentating crew. John Hindhaugh does a great job.
Yeah,
I love John
absolutely.
Hindhaugh.
Yeah, I love that.
Shay Adam is one person I really want to meet. I've heard she's a sweetheart, and she is very good at what she does. So props to John Heinduff and Shay Adam. Shay Adam no longer doing her full time IMSA duties as a pit reporter. She's now fully on Mazda MX-5 Cup because she works for Mazda now. Apparently, she kept mentioning that throughout the broadcast. She's like, "I work for Mazda now, so I can't say this." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So, but Shay does a great job, and John does a great job. We'll be hearing them a lot over the next couple of days. Robert Wickens actually stepping into the booth tomorrow. How about that?
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah,
Oh,
this
that's
was
awesome.
announced a couple of days ago. Yeah, Wickens will be in the booth tomorrow. I'm excited to hear his voice over the loudspeaker tomorrow. Should be a lot
For
of
the
fun.
Mazda race or the Michelin? For
Michelin
Mazda?
race.
Oh,
Yeah,
Michelin.
Michelin.
Okay, cool, cool.
Yeah, so gonna be exciting
Oh,
to hear
that's
that.
very
Hear that
nice.
voice tomorrow on the broadcast. Liam, I get you know what? Let's make some picks. Let's make some picks for the Rolex 24. And Liam's facial expression just told the entire story. Liam, let's make some quick picks real quick here for the Rolex 24. We'll kind of go from GTD Pro and kind of move our way upwards, if you will. But this is such a tough race to choose, obviously. But let's begin at GTD. Let's make some picks here for who we think is going to win each class. So GTD, who do you have, Liam? Who do you have winning the GTD class this year?
I am rooting for Connor Zilic.
Hmm.
And Shane Van Ginsberg. I think that's a really strong lineup. They're starting a little further back.
Well, there's the
For
GTD
sure.
Pro, GTD.
Oh, GTD. I am so sorry.
No,
For GTD, I really like the look of Elliot Skier today. I thought he had an impressive performance. He got the pole, right? Yeah, Elliot Skier. So I'm going to go for the number one team.
you're going to go for the 120, the number
yes,
120.
120. My
The largest number on the grid gets the number one class win. They're a very good team. I think they're going to have a very solid year. They actually were one of the strongest teams in terms of endurance racing last year. So I definitely think that they're going to be a team to be reckoned with. This is tough, man. This is actually a very tough decision to make. A lot of Ferraris on this grid. Liking that a little bit. You know, I really want to go with Korthoff Competition Motors. I've been kind of been gearing towards them a little bit. But Mercedes has had a bit of problems over the last handful of days with some of their torque sensors not working properly. There's been some issues there with that. This is tough, man. This is really a tough choice. But you know what? I'm gonna go with Korthoff Competition Motors. Give me them to get the job done and win. They got a solid lineup this year. Give me Korthoff Competition Motors to get the job done and win the Rolex 24. I think they're a solid program. They've always been kind of consistent up towards the top of the grid. So I'm gonna go with the Mercedes team to get the job done. Second straight Mercedes win in the GTD class, by the way, with them. So or not with them, but with the brand. So I'm gonna go with them.
Cool.
GTD Pro. Who you got in GTD Pro?
So I'm definitely going with the number 91, the Trackhouse team, with Connor Zilic, Shane Van Ginsberg, and Scott McLaughlin, and some other guy. That's got to be fun to be the fourth person. Ben Keating.
Ben Keating. How can you not forget Ben Keating, the man?
No disrespect. No, Ben Keating. If you're listening to this, no disrespect, man. I just really like
guy. Ben Keating, one of the best IMSA drivers.
I just like IndyCar, and I like Connor Zilic. So those are the people I'm focusing on. They're definitely starting a little lower back. I was a little surprised they qualified as low as they did, as low as it was Keating. I think Keating was driving the car today during qualifying. Yeah. I'm not certain on that. But that's a very strong lineup to me, and I have trust in them, so they're my pick.
I like it. I mean, it seemed like in qualifying, a lot of the factory teams ran well today. That seemed to be the theme of the day for the qualifying runs. This is a tough. The GTD Pro class is basically all all factory teams. So it is going to make things kind of challenging. This is tough, man. This is tough. There's some really good teams in this. I'm going to go with the number 3 Corvette. I'm going to go with the Corvette. I think, Corvette or Mustang are due for a big race win, and this would be a big race win if they're able to pick it up. Corvette and Ford last year, or Chevrolet and Ford both had a kind of up and down year. There was a lot more ups later in the year for Ford, and they seem to be a very strong team coming off last year. So they're definitely a team that's going to be contested with. But Corvette's always had a lot of strength in this race. I'm going to go with the number 3 Corvette to get the job done.
Very nice. Very, very cool.
Alrighty, we got LMP2, the only spec class. Well, technically spec class now, after the Ligier is no longer in the series with Sean Creech Motorsports, but nevertheless, LMP2 kind of a interesting class given that everything is in Orica, so kind of a level playing field. But who do you have in the LMP2 class?
This is a tough one. I don't know too much about a lot of this. The United Autosports team, the number 22 that got pole, Paul Di Resta is a very solid driver. That seems pretty good. I'm interested in the number 73 with Fittipaldi and Callum Ilott, another IndyCar guy. I think I'm actually going to go with them. I'm going with the Young Guns. I'm going to go with that team.
I like it. First race
73.
in the program. I like it.
Yep.
Yeah, United Autosports, Liam, is the team owned by Mr. Zach Brown.
Yes. Oh, there you go.
There you go. I'm going to go with Ben Keating's team. That guy, apparently, that you were mentioning. Nah, I actually think PR1 Matheson, they're back under their own umbrella this year. They looked really strong in qualifying. Benjamin Peterson's also on that entry list. So another kind of fellow IndyCar guy there, if you will, or used to be a fellow IndyCar guy. And I'm going to go with PR1 Matheson to get it done. They look pretty strong in qualifying, and they got a pretty good lineup heading into this weekend. So give me PR1 Matheson. It's a really good LMP2 grid this year. A lot of really strong teams. So looking forward to seeing how that will go. And now to the big class, the GTP class. And, you got a handful of teams here. You got a couple Formula E friends, if you will, here on the grid. A couple interesting names. Who do you got winning in the GTP class this season?
Realistically,
or I should say for this race,
I think the 93, the Meyer Shank Racing with Alex Palou and everyone, is probably my pick for who I think will win. And that's what I will say. Yes, I'm going to go with them.
Okay. I'm going to go with the number 60 with Colin Braun, Tom Bloomquist back in kind of back with the boys, if you will. The band's back together. They've been kind of going with. This is a team that's been so consistent in practice this week and even last week as well. I do think BMW is going to be a really strong contender, but with a race this long, you just never know what's going to happen. You never know what problems may arise. I do think Acura has been probably the most reliable this week in terms of it seems like they've had kind of been hitting on all cylinders. Same thing with BMW. So I'm going to go with the number 60, the team, the sister car, or I guess some people would call it the big brother car, if you will, because that's basically the returning lineup that they pretty much had outside of Simon Pagenaud and Helio Castroneves are not in that lineup. But give me the number 60 to kind of go back to back, if you will, back to back to back, because they were out in 24, but they had won the last two Rolex 24s with the Meyer Shank Racing team in that 60 car. So give me the tandem of Braun and Blomqvist to grab the win in the 60. So that is going to be my pick for the Rolex 24. And that is where we will close the show. That's right. It was a great show tonight, guys. Really a lot of fun to get to talk some Rolex 24 racing. Liam, it's going to be an exciting weekend, man. Oh, man. It is going to be fun. I can't wait to be at the track. I can't wait to show you some photos, show you the culture of the track here at Daytona. Dude, I'm pumped. Can't wait. It's going to be so good. A lot of good stuff on tap here this weekend. Remember, guys, go check out City Garage Motorsports. Our friends over at CGM are rapidly preparing for their upcoming race at Daytona. Go check out all their stuff. We do have their link in our description below. Tune in. Go check them out. Go see what they're up to. Remember, you can still sponsor the car. $250, Liam. How many? You can spend a lot with $250, but How many people can say that you can get your logo on the car? Yeah, that's impressive.
Half a PS5 logo on a car. It is.
logo
It
on
is.
logo on the car. I'll take
I
logo
would
on the
take logo
car.
on a car. Yeah.
I don't know if half the PS5 will work, but no, go check out City Garage Motorsports. Go see what all they're doing. We were able and fortunate enough, as we mentioned last week, to go to their test date, get to cover the test, get to talk with Becca and Stuart, get to really interact with the team. It was such a great week. I'm really excited for what's to come with us and the team. Also, big shout out to De Benedetto Racing. That's right, De Benedetto Racing. We got to check out their team this past weekend at the VP Racing Fuel Sports Car Challenge races this past weekend. We got a video coming out very soon. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. It is awesome. Liam, I don't want to spoil anything. There's some pretty awesome stuff in this video. We get to check out the car, the hauler, everything. It was pretty sweet. We got to check out some pretty cool stuff. Really excited getting to do some stuff with Justin De Benedetto and the rest of his team. He loved the pictures I sent him, so I'm happy about that. It means I'm doing something right, hopefully, or doing something somewhat right, if you will. So happy about that. And also want to thank the Tampa Bay Auto Museum as well. Go check out them in Pinellas Park. They got some great stuff over there. Liam, you had saw my video. It is a pretty cool video to check out. The 1929 track that won the Le Mans race in 1930. That is something incredible. I mean, you just never see history like that. And you saw the other cars in that display, Liam. It's quite impressive, that collection of just history that's on display. It is quite awesome. I don't know if you have any words to add to that.
I love cars. I love the history of cars, and I like those two things. That's all I have to say.
I like it. I like it. Good work. Good work. Well, anyways, we will be back next week. We'll probably be back next Wednesday. I think we'll be back next Wednesday. We'll take a look at our schedule, get that all squared away. But nevertheless, we'll be back next week. We'll have a big show for you. We'll be recapping the Rolex 24. There will be NASCAR racing back next week. The Cup Series returns as a Bowman Gray Clash will be competed next week. So our first NASCAR preview of the season. We'll talk some more Supercross stuff. We got a lot of stuff coming, man. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks. Daytona 500s in February, Sebrings in March. Just so much to talk about, Liam. There's so much to get into, my friend. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks here. It's really the kickstart of the racing season. This is kind of the big race that kind of really gets your fuel, the amp, and it's amazing. But anyways, guys, go check out all of our work again. Scan the QR code while you can. Check out all of our articles. We got some really good stuff coming out this weekend from the Rolex 24. Some great interviews are coming out. We still have some stuff getting posted here over the next handful of days. So stay tuned for all that. Again, peace out, everybody. Enjoy the Rolex 24. Watch it on Peacock, NBC's Channel of Families. My name's Dylan Spalding. That's Liam Herbert. We'll see you guys next time. We'll see you guys next week. Peace out, guys.